So, Catherine, do we want to get started?
Yep, sure.
All right, then we'll call to order Tuesday, April 6th, 2021, special meeting of the Municipal Building Committee. And first on is the approval of the March 2nd special meeting minutes.
So moved.
I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed or abstains? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, so now to the meat of this. So new school project, the bid phase. We've all been fortunate. We've had a rather successful bid phase. There were a few minor hiccups, and the project team went back out to rebid with the flooring and terrazzo. Didn't really make a movement, but it definitely clarified what the owner's intent was as far as those trade packages. That was successful as well. So we're here this evening to review the bids, review the recommendations for those trade contract awards. And based upon those trade contract awards, O&G has prepared their GMP, or guaranteed maximum price. And we have that document with us tonight to review and, if appropriate, take action on, and have a possible motion to forward that to the Board of Selectmen for their ratification. And so the first selectman can enter into that agreement formally. That being said, we have previously made those recommendations to the Board of Selectmen, and the first selectman has sent back O&G the letters for the critical trade contracts. So as everybody knows and can see out on site, we have machines out there, and the site contractor has mobilized and is actively preparing a building pad and roadway. So it's not that it's held anything up, but this is really the formalization of the process at this point. So without much further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Laurel and Dave and let them go through the balance of the bids, go through what just happened with the flooring rebid, and also for them to present their GMP. Briefly, it's been in everybody's packet, both last time and this time. But, let's go through it. And if anybody has any other questions, then we'll take those at that point.
Okay, I'd be happy to. This is Laurel Purcell with O&G. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so as everybody was aware, we went out and actually rebid the flooring package. When we originally bid the flooring, we had the terrazzo as part of the flooring, so it was together. And wood flooring was separate, ceramic tile was separate. So we had three individual. When we went out and rebid, we actually broke away the terrazzo flooring separately. So I'm going to start at the beginning. When we rebid the flooring, the first go round with the original bids, I think we had four bids the first go round. And you can see we had a pretty nice spread there. So we got 5 bids on the rebid. This was after we pulled out the terrazzo bid. Terrazzo, we had 3 bids. Again, these guys were somewhat close, our first and second bidders. The wood flooring rebid a little bit more than last time, because we made some clarifications to the wood flooring, so that came back in. So that's basically the bid results, and we scoped everyone. When we first received the flooring bids, R&B was pretty much the apparent low bidder at the time, and you can see they only ended up with the wood flooring. They were highest on the flooring bid, and they were highest on the terrazzo the second time around. So they were unsuccessful in getting the project again. But that's just a quick snapshot. I don't know how long we were on the street for when we went out and rebid, maybe 2.5 weeks or so, but it was a pretty quick turnaround. We didn't receive any questions. The design team had done a good job with the clarifications. So I'll be happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything on the bids before I open the GMP document.
What was the gross that you carried in the GMP versus what the gross was of these rebids?
I had that at one time.
Laurel, if you want, I can look back to what we had in there previously, if you, in the previous iteration.
You gotta do the math. So we had the 2.3 plus 5.77 plus 2.20. So those three numbers. And I knew that at one time. So these three versus where we are today, which is the 8.33, the 1.2, and the 2.38.
Round numbers.
I'm purely going from memory, but I seem to remember when we took a look at it, they were almost dead even.
Yeah, it's just the numbering. So it's these three numbers, 577 plus 2.3 plus 220 versus the 833, 1.2, and 238.
Give me a minute, I'll do it. You can move on. I'll tell you in just a second.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a stumper. That's not fair. I don't have.
Come on, that was an easy one. Wow, if you get stumped on that one, I hate to see what that rest of the questions are going to be like.
So just to kind of reiterate where we were at the GMP, back at a special meeting at the beginning of March, we asked for the building committee to look at the GMP. I went through it briefly as far as what the contents of it were. There has been some back and forth over this past month or so of various items that we had included in there. We received review comments from the MBC members. And when, I don't know if everybody remembers, but I did say when I came back, the final document would be this, what's called this A133, which is what the guaranteed maximum price. This is the actual contract document. And then this document that you guys had all previously seen is a mere attachment to that. So I don't know if people have had a chance to take a look at it, but there was quite a few changes between what you all saw at the beginning of April or March and what we're seeing tonight. So I can kind of highlight those or just answer questions, whatever the pleasure of the committee is, if you'd like me to kind of walk through the document.
Why don't we take questions from the committee? I think we've all, I mean, obviously this document being the formal piece, but the attachments are what we all reviewed for the last month.
Right.
Jack, Ludwig, I know we had a conversation earlier today. You had a question on just an item at the end of the schedule that you wanted to modify?
Yeah. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm off mute. Yeah, I had a couple of schedule comments briefly. Could you look at the schedule and change item A1350, which says commissioning of the heating system, and change that to heating system functional test? Because it's not going to be the commissioning of the good. Thank you. It's not going to be the commissioning of the heating equipment commissioning. I mean, the heating equipment commissioning consists of the pre-operational testing and the functional testing of the heating system, and that's going to include the calibration, the testing of the sequence of operations, the alarms and interlocks, and then verifying that everything works. If the boiler will be turned on, the high and low cutout switches will be tested, and so on and so forth. All that's going to occur during the summer. All that is going to occur in November. The system is going to be totally set up and ready to go. All we're going to do is turn the boiler on and adjust the thermostats in all the rooms and just go around to make sure the boiler can keep all the rooms warm. Maybe possibly test the boiler output itself. But that's totally different than commissioning of the heating equipment. That is a functional test of the heating system. And instead of being a 20-day period, that's going to be, I don't know, 1 to 3 days. So why am I making a big deal about this? It may be trivial, but I've seen this kind of confusion at the end of a project result in problems when things go to arbitration or litigation or whatever. It's just a total misnomer. Would that be?
Okay, so all right, so Jack, this is Laurel Purcell with ONG. So the commissioning that I have is A7660, which is happening during the summer, is pretty much all of the equipment that can be the cooling, that whole side of things.
Right.
This is the heating side of things. So what is it, the title that you would like me to change it to?
Could you change that, please, to heating system functional test?
Heating system functional, systems plural, right? Or singular?
Singular.
functional test.
Right.
Testing.
Test. It's a single test, really. And just for the sake of symmetry, could you add another item there? Cooling system functional test, which will obviously be done in the summertime.
But the true commissioning of the heating plant and the heating equipment, it's my understanding that that will not happen until the heating season. It won't be happening in the summer with the rest of the commissioning.
Well, what will be happening, Laurel, is during the summer is all the instrumentation associated with the heating system will be commissioned. I mean, you can do everything. You don't have to have heat to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You will check out, calibrate all the instrumentation, check all the alarms and interlocks, go through the sequence of operations that are outlined in the control drawings. That'll all be done before the children come to school.
Okay. So I will add, I'm going to keep the commissioning the way that I have it. And then I'm
Right.
going to add a new activity called cooling system functional test for 3 days. And I'm going to stick it somewhere in the time frame of the commissioning.
Right.
And then I'm going to change A1350 to say heating system functional test. And I'm going to make it be 3 days.
Right, that's fine. And the only other thing, would you stick a schedule item in there for training of the operating staff, just as a placeholder so people don't forget about it?
Should it be a 4-week period, a 3-week period?
Yeah, it's 3 week would be fine, maybe, and maybe stick it in August or September.
Jack Ludwig, Jack Butkus, didn't we purchase that as part of our commissioning package?
We do have training. The commissioning agent will be doing all the videography of the training that's done by the various system contractors. So that is in the various contracts. That obligation is driven by the specs and in the various bid packages. But I guess it doesn't harm anybody to list it on the schedule here as a reminder that we're actually going to follow through with it.
Yeah, it's just a reminder. It's a placeholder to keep people focused on that because it's something that typically gets lost in what's going on, and it's vitally important for the plant, for the equipment to be operated correctly during occupancy.
Yeah. Okay. Also add those 2 items and I'll change the title and the duration of that A1350.
That's great. And I
Great.
had
Thank
one
you.
other question. One other question. Has the commissioning agent actually seen the schedule and had any chance to give any input to it?
No.
They
No.
they have seen the bid documents, which included the schedule as was presented to you all.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have not
Right,
gotten
and that
any
was part of
pushback.
their RFP that we sent out.
Yeah. But I haven't received any sort of feedback from them regarding the schedule.
All right, anything else, Jack?
Are we going to talk about a GMP? Because I had one question on the GMP.
Yeah, that's what
No,
we're
it's a
talking
question.
about now, so.
It's a question I've asked before, and I've probably gotten the answer, but I forgot about it. I forgot what it was. Eversource is going to provide some kind of reimbursement based on the energy EUI for the facility. Has that ever been identified how much that is and has been incorporated into the GMP, or should it be incorporated into the GMP?
No, you won't see that money. The refund goes right to your general funds or whatever. It's away from the project. It's kept away from the project. And Jack can explain that better because it has to do with your grant.
Right.
I'll ask Brad from CES if he has a ballpark number as to what our incentives are likely to be.
So we actually literally just got review comments back today on the model that we submitted to Eversource. So we'll go back and we have to, tweak a few things and resubmit to them, but it's generally in the $1.50 a square foot range. There is a max. I think it maxes out at, I forget the cap, but $1.50 times 150,000 square feet, you can get 250 grand.
And as far as the accounting for that, Jack, the auditors at the state have gotten to be pretty savvy. They understand that the utilities have these programs. And what we used to see people do is rather than have the money hit the project and be considered by the auditors as another source of funding, and then deducting money from the state grant therefrom. People used to add it like, apply it as a credit to their electric bill or their gas bill or something like that, and never touch the project. Well, the auditors know that the money is out there, that the towns are applying for these incentives. And so even if you hide it in your back pocket, as a credit on your electric bill, the auditors are going to ask for a computation of it. And, if you're getting 27% of the project from the state, they're going to take 27% of that incentive from the utility company and deduct that from your grant. So
effectively, the grant goes to the state.
well, it's to the proportion that the state is funding the project, they share in the savings.
Yeah.
But the town, in your case, the town is getting almost 3/4 of that incentive as as another stream of funding into the project.
And when is that usually done? That's usually done at the end and they've audited it, or how fast does that money come to the town?
Brad?
I mean, from Eversource, you'll get it pretty quick. Basically, they have to, once the project is deemed substantially complete, Eversource will send out a representative to walk through the building. I usually walk through with them, and they basically check to make sure we actually installed what we said we were going to install. And then we run a final, we call it an as-built model that has any tweaks that were made in construction to it. And then they're actually fairly quick in turning around that money. So they'll give you a check at the end of the job fairly quickly for the full amount. So sometime towards the end of substantial completion, you'll get that money.
Yeah, and regardless of funding and rebates coming back, we have a max expenditure either way per our bond resolution. So whether it's taxpayer money or whether it's partially offset by a rebate from the power source, it makes no difference to us. We do have a max expenditure. All right. Other questions? Other questions on the GMP?
Yeah, I had one other quick question on the accounting for all the costs. Where is the air and water balancing cost factored into this thing?
Air and water balancing, I believe, is part of the specifications, and so will be in our HVAC contract. So if we were to go to
Correct. Yep. Division 23 carries a testing and balancing contractor, so it's within that sum.
So it's HVAC for the air and Ferguson for the plumbing, for the water.
Yeah, Allstate's doing all of the mechanical piping and ductwork. There's not much to balance on the plumbing side, pretty much just balancing valves on the domestic hot water recirc. And so Division 20, the testing and balancing contractor from Division 23 balances all of it.
So
Well,
Allstate's
they'll have to be balancing done on the heating system though too, right, Brad?
Yeah, all of that is under Division 23.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Paul, this is Dave. The savings below budget for those three items was $775,967.
All right. So I thought it was substantial from what we had in there.
That's like 24.8% or something like that below the budget.
Thank you for doing that, Dave. I appreciate it.
Yep.
that long to do those numbers.
I had them right. Did you want?
Laura,
You're
would have
right.
done them in her head.
You're right, Laurel. You're right. You would have been interrupted. You would have cut anyone off, right? And me, that's what I get for trying to be polite, right? Would like to slow down.
All right. Other members who have comments or questions on the GMP?
Yeah, in review, we noticed, I believe it was on item number 22 about a potential temporary office. And I know we had gone back and forth and asked for any rooms to be, is it number 22? Yes, to be fixed up or touched up if they're damaged. But we saw that it was funded from the CM contingency. So as an owner, I would say we don't want to pay for it twice. If we feel it's going to be that much of a damage, we would ask that we make other arrangements as a temporary office, even leave the trailer out there, or it's just care is taken. But I don't know why we would pay for it to be finished, but then if it's damaged, pay for it to be finished again.
Okay, so the whole point of this was like touch up of paint. Think of moving desks in and out of a space, and then you may want to touch it up with paint afterwards. That's kind of what the idea is. It wasn't, dings in the walls and scratches
Well,
in
it's
the floor. That's
right,
how
but it
it's
says number 22, suitably sized securable rooms for the CM field office. This isn't with moving of furniture. We have a
Right.
separate allowance for that. I
And
believe.
contractor meeting,
Right, exactly. We're
right,
just
and
gonna set it up
contractor
as an
meeting
office.
location.
Yeah, we're just gonna set it up as an office. Maybe refurbish is the wrong word. It was more like
No.
just,
I don't have a problem with that. My question is if a contractor does damage to it, why are we going to use our money to fix it? Because it would come out of the CM contingency.
Well, Josh, this is Dave. I guess one thing of that is that we were thinking of one from logistics, and like you said, the minor touch-ups and things. We'd like to use the contingency because we're saving a lot more in not having the full field office, right? To have the field office, we're paying like $2,100 on rent. I think what we typically see in this are very minor things at the end. I mean, I wouldn't let this be a hang up if we have to do something with that last line of the language, but the intent was to, get out from being under a heavier burdened, office setup, which would be a part of the project cost anyways, and moving into the building where we could, decrease our footprint and decrease the monthly expenditure, was really the intent of that approach.
All right, so. I
Right,
mean,
we
don't
fully
we-
understand that. We were just surprised to see that line added after we went back and forth several times.
So I'll move that we strike that last line in item number 22 prior to approval. And we'll,
Okay,
we'll
that's fine.
just take care of that. I mean,
That's
we're
fine. We'll take that.
talking that the. Go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just going to say the last item. We'll just strike the last line of that item. That's fine.
That's great. Thank you. Any other comments on the GMP? I know we've had a bunch of back and forth, so I think this is pretty well a vetted document at this point.
Well, the only question I have is, I heard Brad talking about a walkthrough with Eversource and having as-built. Are the as-built being done after the project is over as a definite, or is that based on if there are changes and stuff like that throughout the project?
as-built are kept on a monthly basis, and I know Gus can attest to how he checks it, but that's done by every contractor on a monthly basis. They don't wait until the end to update the documents.
I had a question on the technology aspect of it.
Oh, hold on one second, Rob. Hey, Bill, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. That it's being updated every month. Yep, that's good.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. All right, Rob, sorry.
I believe it said in the document that they weren't responsible for unloading the materials and, the technology equipment. Who's
Yes.
responsible for securing it once it's delivered?
We bought, as part of our Cadence contract, move management services. Jack Butkus, could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Part of our role is to assist the town with procurement of FF&E and technology and the move management, which includes both populating the building with the new products as well as whatever curriculum and materials are moving over from the existing buildings into this building. So when it comes to the delivery of technology and the furniture items, our person will be shepherding that installation. We won't be installing furniture or technology until we're at a point typically where the classrooms are lockable, so that things will be able to be put under lock and key, especially the technology items. Furniture, nobody's really going to stick a desk in their pocket and walk out with it. So staging those things in such places as the cafeteria or gym is usually done if they can't move it directly into the classrooms on the day the truck arrives. But the technology ordinarily goes from the delivery vehicle right into the space. where it's going to be used, and then we secure the classrooms or offices as it may be.
And these activities happen post Laurel or post CM completion at the end of the schedule. You know, sometime in May when Laurel turns over the building to us, you know, we have that period of time to, I'm joking, Laurel, it's not sometime in May. At the end of the CM completion, that the building's turned over and Arcadis helps us with the organization and installation of all of those during that last month and a half of summer, just prior to the teachers coming in and setting up their classrooms.
Okay. My concern was is that the equipment would be in a secure location and that it wouldn't have any, how do we say this?
Doesn't grow legs.
Nothing bad would happen to it.
No, understood. That's why when we put out the OPM RFP, those move management services were brought to the forefront by Jack, and we elected to include those in the RFP because we knew somebody had to be responsible, and we can't police this 24/7.
And as Rob Tenz, as a former IT guy himself, he knows how to wire these things for for theft protection, and just hide the taser in the closet and wire all the computers so they can't be stolen.
I was going to add a comment that the IT will get a head start. A lot of your systems, mechanical systems and BMS tie into the network. So we'll have to be working with the Board of Ed IT to get their backbone up and running so we can have the final testing of our systems. But typically the data closets are fully completed and inspected and signed off before any equipment is brought in. We want to eliminate any risk of damage due to dust or any work in the area. So once those closets are done, they're locked, and typically only one person on site has a key, or the Board of Ed would have the key to those closets.
Okay, so is there any other discussion or questions on the GMP document that we've received? So if we don't have any other discussion items, we can discuss having a possible motion to forward this to the Board of Selectmen if everybody is comfortable with it.
So I'll motion we forward this to the Board of Selectmen for execution based upon the comments received and notations made this evening.
Second.
Would you for the record mention the number in that motion, please? $62,255,952.
Right.
Yes,
So
exactly that.
All those in favor of forwarding to the Board of Selectmen the GMP document as presented by O&G Industries as modified here this evening in the amount of $62,255,952. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carried. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Laurel, you can breathe your sigh of relief now.
Really, thank you though, Paul and Josh and everyone who, just, definitely put it through its paces and dedicated the time to getting it resolved. Thank you very much.
No, thank you guys for working with the town and working with us. I know sometimes I can be a pain in the ass. I'll just speak for myself.
I'll second it. Don't worry.
Thanks, Josh.
Do we have a motion on that? Is that? Yeah.
But
really. Thank you.
It's actually been quite a great collaborative relationship with Tecton and ONG and Arcadis and the BOE and the NBC to get to this point. So everybody should be really happy and really proud of all the work that's come into it to get this project finally to the point where shovels are in the ground and we are really moving forward at this juncture. So, new school project construction phase. Now we get to get rid of this bid phase item and really start talking about the meat and stuff. So first on is Eddie and Jeff from Tecton. They may want to kick it to Arcadis. I don't know. It's up to them. Whatever you guys desire.
Yeah, quite honestly, good evening, everyone. There's really not an awful lot for us to talk about on the new elementary school. I think Arcadis and ONG will really cover it. So we can pass that. Paul, did you want me to talk at all about the high school locker room project, or do you want to save that for later?
Unfortunately, I don't have it on the agenda, and this being a special meeting,
Got it.
we can't discuss it.
Okay.
If you would send us an email update that we
Sure.
can circulate, that would be appreciated.
Yep, I can do that.
Perfect. Thank you, Eddie.
Mhm.
All right, so I'll turn it over to Arcadis at this point. Jack?
All right. Well, before we get into the report that Rob will give as far as the update on construction, let me share something. Where did it go in my list of documents here? I had too many things open and it fell off. Give me just a moment. I'd like to share something now that we have a GMP that is approved. I would like to share with you the budget. Here it is. And I'll share my screen. All right, does everyone see the budget document?
Yes. Now, this was in the packet as well, correct?
Yes. As we work through this, you'll see that we have included a GMP value at $62.25 million, which is $3.8 million under what we had originally budgeted. And those dollars were used in part, as we've discussed in the past, to bolster the furniture and technology line items and to round out the budget for the playground because of the rubber surfacing and whatnot. And the furniture and technology driven by the student population increase. So the net value from where we thought we were going to be at the end of the estimates from the construction phase, we thought we'd have about $2 million in the owner's contingency. With the bid savings, even after making these further investments, we now have a contingency value of $4.7 million, which on a project of this magnitude is a much more comfortable place than working in the $2 million range. So we did not, two pieces of good news. We did not have to return to the town and ask for additional appropriation or to have the cap of 78,141 increased. And while properly servicing the students, the quantity of students that will populate the building, we've still been able to build out all the classrooms that you intended to build and bolster the contingency at the same time. So I just wanted to point out that particular piece of good news before Rob gives his commentary on the project.
Yeah, I mean, we had a net add of 10 classrooms and somewhere around 15,000 square feet. And that's a lot on a building this size, and it's a testament to, again, design team and ONG and Arcadis that everybody was able to bring this in a favorable, even in a favorable bid market. The ability to bring this in, something that was potentially somewhere around 10 to 15% over, to bring it in under was a great feat and testament to the team we have. Now, Rob, with that, I'll turn it over to you, Rob.
Okay. So we're about 3 weeks, the start of 3 weeks into the project, and we are currently starting to excavate 4 footings in area A. We started that today. The construction access road coming in through the southern part of the property has been completed and firmed up. We have experienced some unsuitable soils, which the contractor has been dealing with. It's been along the access road on the as we approach the brook, and then also in some areas in the back of the fields where the building is going. So there is an impact on the overall budget with that discovery, but we're doing some exploratory work to find the extent of that. Unfortunately, the unsuitables that we found happened between some of our test borings that we did in pre-con. So right now we are working with SLR and soon to be our testing agency to oversee the excavation work as we move forward and try to find the extent here.
All right, just so everybody knows, this has a potential monetary impact of upwards of 400,000. That's about 9% of our contingency, and that Jack just touted. It's a rather large item that we may have to look at in detail. You know, we're going to have to go back to Malone and McBroom, who is now SLR, to talk about the amount of borings that were done and how we can find unsuitables in between all the borings that were done, but not find them pre or during the design process. You know, there's a couple of questions here, and even working with Gerber maybe to, you know, with the unit costs, you have 10, you have 20, you have 100 yards, you have 1,000 yards of unsuitable. We have a unit cost. We're looking somewhere in the magnitude between 8 and 11,000 cubic yards. It's a lot. We've also today reached out to the town. Jack Butkus reached out to the town and Ralph Tedesco to see if there's any place in town we can place this unsuitable fill. Now, it's unsuitable for a building pad and a roadway, but it may be still suitable for filling operations, say at Wisconsin for the ball fields, or at the town hall property for ball fields. So we're trying to find those efficiencies right now to help mitigate these costs, but we are looking at something that could potentially be a magnitude of upward of 400,000. So it is kind of a serious and big item that's kind of out there. Hopefully this will be the one and only, because once you come out of the ground on a new building, there should be relatively few other unknowns. This was the big wild card. The other one's going to be the amount of asbestos in the existing building once they start taking it apart, to make sure that, you know, nothing else rears its ugly head. But those are our two wild cards right now. We wanted to make sure everybody was abreast immediately, because this just popped up in the last day or two. So Rob, anything else on the unsuitables or construction right now?
Submittals are coming in hot and being reviewed. We're trying to mobilize ONG is trying to mobilize the concrete contractor as soon as possible to start footings. We are also preparing to have our first pay-up ready for review at the next NBC meeting, hopefully in 2 weeks. And other than that, yeah, things are coming in hot and heavy. So,
all right, we need to talk about the payout process, what we've done in the past with pencil recs, and then final recs. I don't think we've discussed that yet here. You know, what we've done in the past on the high school project, as far as what the NBC has done, how we've reviewed it, and moved those items forward. So, you know, in the next couple of days, I don't know what ONG has in their contract or what Arcadis you have in yours as far as that process, but I think we'd like to hear from you on how it could best work, both so the owner has the ability to review and forward them, and also expeditiously approve them, because we know paying contractors on a timely basis is important to the fluidity of the project.
yep, I can get together with Gus and the rest of the ONG team, and we'll put together a narrative for your
That
review.
would be helpful for us.
We have a template for that process in our internal project management plan that we can use to to build on and share that with you, and then you can share that with other members if you choose.
Yeah, no, everybody has to be comfortable with this process. Otherwise, we're just going to turn it over to Jack Ludwig, and good luck there.
He's got a sharp red pencil.
Oh, yes, he does. Okay, so the last thing, Rob, I know we spoke about the other day, and everybody is eager to go out and see the construction site. You know, it's very, very tempting. In the future, as we're able to kind of get back together in person, just prior to our monthly meetings, I would like to schedule that kind of half-hour, 45-minute walkthrough. I don't know that during mud season and during site excavation, it's the best idea at this point. There's not a lot to see except for earthwork going on, but maybe in the next month or two, as we get back, hopefully, to in-person meetings, and everybody's comfortable with that we meet out on the site. Everybody's thought on that. I think it would be a nice thing to do before our monthly meetings. Yes, no, nobody wants to go out?
I'm good.
Okay.
Sounds like a good idea.
I got boots. Paul.
You got boots? We'll keep our mutters in the trunk.
Yep, no, I'm good with that. Thank you.
Okay. So, yeah, over the course of the next month, we'll get that first one kind of planned and scheduled. I know
one question.
Yeah.
One question on that, if I may. Are there any requirements from ONG, like we have to wear safety vests or hard hats, steel-toed boots maybe, or attend a safety orientation or anything like that? Or is
I was
it
going to discuss that with Rob Tenza,
Okay.
making sure we have an owner's trailer out there that Rob is occupying.
right?
And in there will be, you know, any identification that we need. We need to go to that trailer just prior to these walkthroughs. And Rob's going to be the person that's going to make sure that we have our, you know, everybody's wearing proper safety gear, but they will send out this little kind of cheat sheet, if you will, of everything that's going to be required as we're walking around that site.
Okay.
Just an FYI, I have a child at Huckleberry right now, and I actually tonight at 5:30 got an email from the principal that there's a video camera they put on top of the school.
Yes.
There's a link that you can look at it. I mean, you can't really see too much, you know, from that link, but just so everybody knows, there is a link to the construction site.
Yeah,
they
one thing, we had a proposal from Multivista, and we shared that proposal with the town's technology, actually the school's technology director. And he said, you know what, it would be great if we could do that in-house. So he gave us a proposal to do that, and he set it up. It's a wonderful thing. We're hoping, you know, we know the link was supposed to go live in a day or two. That was yesterday, I think he told us, Josh.
Yeah, correct. And he also, they took some overall drone photos as well. And the idea with the overall site cam is to do a time stitch or a time lapse and stitch together the construction as it goes over for the next 14 months, Laurel?
12 and a half.
Boy, I commend you all on your consistency in that approach.
So yeah, thank you, Amy, for bringing that up. As soon as we get the link from Eric, we'll share it with everybody so everybody can log in and kind of see progress in real time, which is exciting. So I think that was it from Arcadis' side. Rob, do you have anything else?
I just didn't know if we wanted to discuss the ribbon cutting ceremony or the ceremony on May
groundbreaking.
1st. Yeah,
Yeah,
groundbreaking.
there's a
Not
potential
ribbon cutting.
right now of May 1st, Saturday. We don't have a time. We don't have an agenda yet. Saturday morning. You know, we had some members like that we work out of town. You know, I know, Bill, it's kind of hard for you to do your job remotely. And I know it's kind of hard for me to do my job. So the Board of Ed was gracious enough to accommodate us on a Saturday morning rather than during the week. And, you know, to do a ribbon cutting or a groundbreaking ceremony. Ribbon cutting would be at the end.
Yeah, we'll do that later.
But to do a groundbreaking ceremony And I know it's right now in its infancy of being developed. Hopefully in the next week, we'll get the details from Dr. Burrell. Unless Rosa, do you have any other information on that?
No, we just wanted to kind of firm up the date with you, and then we'll work with Eddie and kind of figure out what details will be, and we can get this scheduled.
Great.
I
Rob,
appreciate
anything
it.
else?
I appreciate the consideration, Paul. Thank you.
No, thank you to the Board of Ed for
Yeah.
entertaining that for us.
All right, now to get into the more nutsy boltsy things, I'll share my screen with a document that you've seen before. We distributed it, I think, a couple of meetings back. These are the bid results from the material testing solicitation. We had 6 respondents, pardon me, and the wording of the RFP says, tell me your unit costs and let me know how many of each of these types of tests or inspections you anticipate doing on a project, which we described to them as far as what the nature of the building was and the overall square footage. And people being people, they all looked at it a little bit differently. So as I distributed the packet some time ago, there was as bid, everyone's response. Then we had to come up with a quantity. Since the quantities were all over the map, we did an effort that kind of averaged out the quantities, came up with a made up quantity for each of the tests, which I then applied to those unit costs so that we could have kind of a cost averaging opportunity to really compare apples to apples rather than just nuts and bolts. And so using these consistent quantities across the map with all the different responses, using the unit costs as each company proposed in their proposals. Anything highlighted in yellow here is the low price for any particular item. That was the lowest unit cost. And I was looking at it, I said, what is it, does it make sense to try to, find the one who had the largest number of low prices and recommend them? And I came up with this, well, let's normalize it with a quantity that may not reflect reality, but at least it's something consistent for comparison's sake. And I'll further say that we have a line item budget for inspection and testing services of $200,000. And our recommendation would be, based on whoever you choose tonight, that we establish a purchase order value in that amount. And then they would bill monthly, based on the actual testing that's performed. But as you see here, with these normalized quantities and everyone's actual bid unit prices, the comparative values are here in the bottom row. And we have some pretty tight numbers in the bottom. We've got something that starts to spread a little bit, and we've got someone who's very, very proud of their services. On the surface, based on the math, and also coincidentally on closest proximity to the project, it would appear as though the best value is to use special testing laboratories. And I'd be happy to go over any of the process, any questions that you might have on the process, or if you're satisfied with the explanation so far, I would love to entertain a motion to award the testing and inspections contract.
Well, the question I have is for Gus. Gus, I know that response time and the return of the test is critical, especially during concrete pours and steel testing. Do you have any observations to make as far as who would give you the best response times?
Out of all the ones that are listed here, I previously worked with special testing, and they do give us the results pretty quick. They're very efficient. So I have good experience with them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Jack Ludwig, you have any input? I know this is right up your alley too.
No, I really, I haven't worked for any one of them, so I can't really give you any input on it.
All right. We've worked with special testing before as well, Gus. We've always had good luck with STL. So,
yeah, I know John Hardman, who used to run them over there. I don't know if he's still around, but I did the job with him. I think he was in Colchester.
Okay.
So
Yeah, he's still there, Gus, because we just started another project with him in Darien a couple months ago.
they're good.
Bill, you have any experience with any of these guys?
No, I can't say I have.
All right. What about Jack, Rob, you guys?
I've worked with Tri-State. They're on 3 of my other projects presently. As Gus said, we've worked with special testing before. IMTL, who didn't respond, is another frequent flyer. But the conversation, I have to say, special testing was very tenacious in this interim period between the time the proposals were submitted and today, and they're very anxious. I told them that they're in the running, and if they were selected, then they've already been reaching out to Gus to to keep their focus. Should they be awarded, to know what it was that the project was going to need and when. And if you do select them tonight, I believe that they're coiled and ready to strike as far as coming out to take care of the soils issue.
All right, Eddie, what about you?
Sorry, excuse me. Having trouble finding the mute button. Yeah, no issues on our end.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we queried all of our consultants. Anybody have any questions for Jack Butkus on this, or want to make a motion?
So I'll make a motion that we, excuse me, enter a contract with special testing in amount not to exceed $200,000 based upon their invoicing.
And the unit cost presented.
And the unit cost, yeah, therein.
Did I get a second?
Seconded.
All those in favor of recommending award to special testing for testing and inspection services?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstained? All right, motion carried.
Very good. Next item on my to-do list for tonight is to touch base on Multivista. We have shared their proposal in the past, and it's been of less critical concern than getting the bids reviewed. As Paul mentioned, in their original proposal from back in December, there was a component for a webcam, which now the school's IT department has been able to satisfy. But there still is the other list of services, general services. The site survey, I think we pretty well missed that opportunity to do an existing conditions capture before work began. But for the exterior and interior progressions, as David shared when he did the presentation to the committee, it's kind of the not really a time lapse from having a camera there all the time, but by revisiting the same spaces in the same ways to work through the spaces and capture the work as it progresses, to do the MEP exact built, as well as the opportunities to explore some of these other supplemental services, a foundation exact built pre and post waterproofing, underground plumbing, which might have value just as we're capturing the mechanicals in the ceilings and in the walls. It may, it sounds as though it would be an enhancement to capture what's under the slab before we pour the concrete. Building envelope, we know we're going to have the ICF system, but we're going to put coatings on that for the air barrier, etc. So that might have some value. Interior exact builts, 360 views after the rough-ins are complete, and then milestone projections as another a la carte offering. The core of the offerings, of course, are in this original piece of the proposal. The interior and exterior grabs and the MEP exact builds, which now taking out the pre-construction item would bring us below this $40,000 number. So it'd be about 39,000-ish based on these two unit costs unless you wanted to add any of these supplemental, alternate services to the package. It's been a while since we discussed it. May have gone stale in your mind, so I'm happy to answer any questions. And I believe Dave Cravenzo, I think you've on some other projects, you're contracting directly with Multivista or through some of your trades. Is that correct?
We are. We're doing more of a, somewhat scaled down, really the kind of a basic monthly progression. And we find that especially on projects where we're doing, to capture, MEP exact builds in the walls. And like I said, just to have the continuity and the perspective of the photos taken with a professional camera.
So there are photographs that the O&G will do on a regular basis as part of their normal monthly reporting, but these are more detailed. And then, as David described, they do create kind of an interactive set of documents, floor plans and elevations, so that you can key in each of these images and track them individually. And as they progress, you can go to that same spot and then click through the life of the project and see that perspective as it grows. The platform that they create also gives us an opportunity to take any other images that any of us take, either on the PM side or the CM side, and tag those to the plan as well. So in essence, we're using their big digital folder to hold our input as well, and make it further accessible, to the owner down the road to use for as-built or maintenance services. So there's the fact that platform becomes available to us, and it all gets put on a drive at the end of the project. So you're not left with a perpetual subscription that you have to buy just to get to your own data. It all gets turned over to you with a program that makes it accessible, that then becomes something that Dan Caldwell and his successors down the road can refer back to.
All right.
I'd like
Anybody
to
have
have
any
some
questions?
input from the board and, the Board of Education, and Dan is in particular, as to the value that they see in it.
Yeah, I'm with you, Rob. I'm struggling a little bit with some of the values, particularly. And look, if there was an existing building, as you strip stuff away, like it was at the high school, I see a lot of value there. I'm kind of struggling with duplication of services here. Jack, I think, would it be okay if we kind of digested this, maybe discussed it over the next 2 weeks, and came back at our regularly scheduled meeting to look at this?
I think that's fine. I know we don't want to get too far along with foundations, but I think from what Gus was sharing as far as schedule, I don't think we won't be having a topping off party before the next meeting. That's for sure.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, it's fine, man.
Yep.
It's fine with me, but again, I would like to bring this to the Board of Education and get their input on it as well as a partner in this decision.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, and that's what my thinking was, more on Dan Caldwell's side, and to see what would be a useful tool, and what seems to be, hey, that's really cool, but we don't know that, with a good set of as-built and all the tools, infrared cameras and thermal imaging that we have today, what's the full necessity of what the offering is?
We've got some time to explore that, and we'll revisit it in 2 weeks.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Jack. All right, Gus, Laurel, Dave, you have anything to add under the construction phase update for O&G?
Nothing much to add over Rob's report. I think he covered the construction progress to date. But we hit the ground running on March 15, and we've accomplished quite a bit in 3 weeks. You can see the pictures behind me how it was before we started, and now the place is kind of torn up, upside down, which is what we like to see at this point. But a lot of good progress on site. Construction fences up. We've established ourselves as good neighbors with the school community. and the neighbors. So we're making every effort to be cognizant of them and making sure that they continue their operation. And things are moving well on site. So we're in good shape.
Great, thank you. Dave, Laurel, that's it?
No, nothing else to add. Thank you.
Construction starts, you have nothing to say, huh? Okay.
Well, I actually do, but I was gonna wait till towards the end. That, that the, selectman signs off on a GMP, and this is my last meeting, so it was nice working with you all, but I won't say goodbye yet.
Okay.
Hey,
We expect to see you at the next meeting.
I had one quick question. On the schedule, that MEP coordination is supposed to have started March the 17th. Did that actually occur? And the question, it did.
Yeah, we started our MEP coordination on time, and all the trades right now are coordinating for the underground piping. That's all the utility pipings that are going through our ICF walls. So that's work in progress. It did start.
Which trade is actually taking responsibility for producing the BIM model?
We control it. ONG is the gatekeeper.
Right.
And each trade contractor gives us the layers that belong to him, and we put it all together, and it's all coordinated in a 3D
Okay,
BIM
so
model.
the model is actually produced on an ONG computer then. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's posted on our AConnect platform. Every week we update it.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question, Paul?
Yes.
I don't mean to jump in, but I was just wondering, since the construction fence has gone up, they've also since put that black sort of screening along the fences. Is there any way, at least near the play areas, that maybe little portholes or something can be cut? Because I know the kids are really excited to see the construction going on, and they actually got their view kind of blocked. And I think it'd be really cool for them to kind of see what's going on. So is there any way that, some viewing areas can be cut out of that fencing or that screening?
Gus?
Yeah, we have to cut slices in it so the wind doesn't blow it out. So we'll cut a few more at the kids' height if you want. So
that would be great. I know they'd love that. Thank you.
Make sure they're closer to the ground. We're not talking about tall
Yeah,
kids here.
exactly. Very low to the ground at once. Yeah.
Somehow this image from a Little Rascals episode came into my mind with the kids putting their face up to a wooden fence. But
yep. Exactly.
Okay.
Rosa, while we have you on the commentary, I have a quick question. Has the school officially accepted Candlewood Elementary School as its name?
Yes, Candlewood Lake Elementary.
Candlewood Lake Elementary. Could we start updating our documents to reflect that?
Updating what documents?
A lot of the documents are saying, the new school, the Brookfield school, this.
Well, it's always been the new school at the Huckleberry site, because prior to the naming, and as submitted to the state OSC GNR, those were that for documentation sake, that was always the intent, because again, we didn't want to have anything on there that hinted toward a name. The Board of Ed did their process after OSC GNR. So construction documents, all of that are going to stay. Contracts are all going to stay with how we've been having it. But Board of Ed, I know, has updated their website.
Okay, that's a fabulous explanation. Thank you.
You got it. All right, so communications. None, Catherine?
None.
All right, invoices, Jack?
Invoices, back to me again. I will share my screen. Up for consideration tonight are a slate of invoices, one of which drifts back to something you should have seen in December. So I apologize to Joe Versteeg for having dropped the ball on that one for our third-party code review. The others are progress payments for the months of February and March, as listed herein. The legal services invoice was for a short period of time when we thought we might have a bid protest by one of the contractors. After we shared some facts of life with the contractor, they recognized that they didn't have standing to complain. So that was a fairly, it was a kind of a mad dash to prepare ourselves, and then fortunately went away pretty quickly. So small legal bill there. Total value of the invoices presented tonight, $162,678.10. And we have a motion to approve.
All right. Anybody want to make a motion? No, guess nobody does. Okay.
Nobody gets
Sorry,
paid.
Jack.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the invoices presented in the amount of $162,678.10.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Any discussion? Okay, get a second. I'm sorry. I should have asked for the discussion after the second. Can I get a second?
Seconded.
All right, now the motion's been made and seconded. Now, is there any discussion? I know Rob was going to call me out on Robert's Rules of Order if I didn't correct myself. All right, no discussion. All those in favor of approving the invoices as presented, Catherine, I will read them out to you just so we have them on the record. For Versteeg Associates in the amount of $25,500, Colliers International Commissioning Services for $717.50. Tecton Architects in the amount of $26,495.42. O&G in the amount of $15,384.62. Robinson and Cole Attorneys in the amount of $819. Arcadis in the amount of $18,648. O&G again for pre-construction services in the amount of $15,384.56. Another invoice by Arcadis in the amount of $20,000, and the last invoice from Tecton Architects for this phase in the amount of $39,729, totaling $162,678.10. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody abstain? Anybody oppose? Motion carries.
Very good, thank you. Next item is for purchase order requests. The first item is for advertising services for legal notices we have to place in a local paper. We had been doing these individually as things have come up, and procurement has asked us to create a purchase order not to exceed $1,500 value with the Danbury paper, so that they do not need to process these things as non-purchase order transactions every time we need to post something. 1,500 should be ample for the solicitations we have in front of us. Next item is for Quinn Ecological. This is a what is it? Herpetologist?
Yes,
Yes.
herpetologist. Yep.
Because we have species that need inspection and care on site, this was a condition of the wetlands approval. There are only 2 consultants in the state that provide this suite of services that have the right qualifications, and we contacted both of them, and one did not want to bid against the other. So we have a single price from Quinn Ecological in an amount of $11,500. I checked with similar services that we've used on other projects, and this is a proportional number. So we had at least something to vet it against. Next item is for builder's risk insurance. This will take us through the heart of the construction period for the new building through summer of '22 for the amount of $47,352. And it is extendable on a monthly basis after our substantial completion date, so that we can continue coverage for the period of time we're taking down the existing building and doing the balance of the site work. But this is for the lump sum number for the heart of the construction period. The GMP amount of $255,952, which you just recently approved, and the purchase order, which will go to the testing lab. Was TBD at the time. It is now special testing, and the amount, as we discussed, is a not to exceed amount of $200,000. So the total amount recommended would go up by $200,000 because of that award to STL. So the amount of purchase order requests for tonight would be $62,516,304.
Okay, so the question I have for you, and this way Rosa understands too, for the Board of Education, the $11,500 cost that we're being saddled with by our Wetlands Commission again, additional costs, is for the herpetologist to come out, take a look at the wetlands, and also for 3 years of review after the end of this project. Is that correct?
Rob can speak to that scope.
Yeah, so there's an initial inspection for the turtles and salamanders. There's biweekly inspections of the exclusionary fence, which is basically our erosion control fencing around the property. There is invasive species of plants and for removal, so there's going to be that activity, and then the 4 years of monitoring the wetlands viability as well as the invasive species of vegetation, and those reports, they will be reporting twice a year for 4 years after the project.
That 4-year extension is included in the 11.5?
Yes.
Do you have a breakout of what that period, that 4 years post-construction, would be worth?
It's I believe it's roughly $4,000. I think it's $1,000 a year for two visits a year.
So Jack, how would we set that up so that when we're closing our books, that would get transferred to the town under a special account for them to make those payments? Because I know we want to probably be closed and audited well before the 4 years is out at the end of this.
We can discuss with between finance and the Board of Ed how we might be able to split this into a $7,500 approval and a separate approval through Board of Ed operating funds for the $4,000 through the post-construction period. If that fails, I have seen other projects that had these extended services where, in essence, the town ended up writing a check ahead of time,
Right.
Which I don't necessarily feel comfortable with. But I have seen that done in the past, so that it would allow the transaction to be recorded and the project to be closed. But being able to split it between a Board of Ed expense and a project expense would be our first choice.
Okay. Yeah, that's something we'll have to discuss because I'm sure the Board of Ed would love to, spend more money every year, given the abundance of funds that they're given every year to expend anyway.
There's
And
no
yes, that was-
reimbursement from the state on any of this, is there?
As a regulatory agency obligation, I believe that these professional services are reimbursable. So you would get your 27%.
But only on the part that's expended prior to the closing and auditing of the project.
Right.
I mean,
If you didn't do the prepay, if you paid the $7,500, you'd get the reimbursement on the $7,500.
Right. So, and again, yes, I was being facetious with the amount of money that the Board of Ed receives every year.
It's always a challenge.
Yeah. And I know there's probably a couple of other fees that we're gonna have to discuss going forward related to wetlands that are probably going to be a condition of their final approval. Rob, correct?
Yes, correct.
And that was what, a wetlands
we would need a soil scientist to oversee the creation of the additional wetlands.
Gotcha. Okay. So we have the purchase order request. We would insert $200,000 into the testing RFP purchase order request, correct?
Correct.
And the total amount recommended for PO approval, it would then be $62,516,304. Correct?
Correct.
All right. All right, so look for a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the requested purchase orders as listed in the documents, which are described as advertising services with Hertz Media for $1,500, ecological services with Quinn Ecological for $11,500, builder's risk insurance with Surma for $47,352, construction manager services with O&G Industries for $62,255,952, testing in the amount of $200,000 as recommended or as proposed in the Arcadis report, for a total of $62,316,304.
Correction, 62,516.
$304, right?
Okay. I'm glad I'm not the only one who stumbled over that number. All right, we have a motion on the floor. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The most amount of money everybody in this room has spent collectively, I think, in their lifetime.
Right.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries.
All right, the last financial transaction tonight is a request for additional services by Tecton. This is to provide the services of the geotechnical engineer for construction administration services, especially important with our situation with unsuitable soils. The cost to the consultant, $20,000 with a 10% coordination markup by Tecton. Total value, $22,000 for geotechnical CA services. And that would go into this last category of, increasing their original purchase order.
Is that for the entirety of testing services for the soil?
This is not testing services. This is for the geotechnical engineer.
I'm sorry. Is this for the entirety of geotech required for this project, for the construction phase, or is this an interim?
I'll have to refer to Eddie. I believe that there was some discussion that we were going to take it on an interim basis. We're hoping that we don't need them as badly as we thought we might, that this may be sufficient. If it turns out that the discovery of these materials extends, we may need to come back at some point. But this is based on the hourly rates for the engineer against this $20,000 line item for their services.
Yes, Jack, I believe what you've said is an accurate reflection. I'll defer. Joseph Kidd from SLR is in attendance this evening. Joseph, is that a fair statement for the services here?
Yes, that's correct. I believe we're been engaged on an on-call basis, so it would be, I would consider that an interim.
So given the events of the differences of the soil borings prepared, originally done, and now the test pits that we're doing, and the disparities between the soils and the two, how we guarantee, I'm a little bit jaded here, I have to say.
So to follow up on that, a quick question as an example, there's an old soil boring, I don't recall which number, and a new one, I think one of them was number 12, that I'm going to say are within 5 feet of each other and have different results.
I guess you're referring to, there was a comment made regarding, and I think it was regarding test pit number 12, and actually was referenced as boring MM30. So those are actually quite a bit far apart. So I think the reference might have been to MM34. So when we issued this field report, keep in mind this is a field sketch. So scale can be misunderstood when we do a field sketch. Now the borings were not surveyed in place. Those were estimated based on site features, taping, and GIS measurements. So the locations of those might be off by 5 or 10 feet. So the test pit 12 was at least 15 to 20 feet away from MM34. So if you look at the data in its entirety, you could look at test pit 10 and test pit 9. Those have very different results, as well as test pit 14 and test pit 13, which are also very close. So what we've noticed in this situation here is that there's a seam of organic material we believe is from a historic stream that was filled in. It's actually somewhat, it's linear right across the site east to west, and it connects up to the north to south stream that I think everybody's aware of. So this did not come up in the borings because the borings are fairly widely spaced, which is pretty standard for a building of this size. And then it was discovered during the more recent test pit excavations.
All right, so the question I would have would be, knowing, if we knew the stream was there because there was made mention in a number of meetings, Eddie, that, oh, there was an old stream bed that was filled in and that was rerouted with the culvert and the pipe when they put in the fields, but this is where the original stream was. Why didn't we pay more attention then to the possibility that there was a stream bed there and there potentially could be organic stream bed?
I guess what I would say there is that this swath that we're seeing actually appears to be running in a direction different from where we understood the stream bed to be. The borings were laid out in an orderly fashion, and given that the building is essentially being placed on top of where the fields are, we expected to see a fair amount of consistency in the conditions out there. So
We knew the history of the site. It wasn't
Sure.
something that was hidden, concealed, or unknown. I guess I have a hard time thinking how many borings were done there across the site.
Well, there were 36 borings across the site. However, only a handful of them were done for the purposes of the building. So the building borings go deeper.
Yep.
And then the other borings go shallower depending upon what we're trying to understand about the ground to support the feature that's going there.
Well, there's still about, I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of around 17, I think, that are done where the building is, correct?
And that original,
it's more like 12 borings for the building.
So 12 borings across a building. What's the footprint there, Eddie? Somewhere around 50,000, 55,000 square feet. And we get a geotech report, which basically says you're good to go.
That's not actually correct.
Well, then what is correct? Again, I'm a little bit, like I said, jaded because we've been going through this. We've asked Tech 10 for some responses over the past 3, 4, 5 days. We really haven't received any. So we read the report together with them last week, and it gave some inclination. It didn't give an order of magnitude that we're looking at. So, look, we're coming out of the gate looking at $400,000. Yeah, I'm going to be, I'm going to ask some questions.
Yeah, that's totally fine, and I'm totally open to answering the questions. So we did the borings, and if you read, I assume you read to the end of the report. So
yes,
we recognized. Well, if we back up a little bit, when we got into this project, it wasn't 100% clear about all the issues that would be revealed during the boring program. So as we did the borings, we recognized this is a very challenging site. Presence of fill, presence of the natural soils there are not the best. We have high groundwater issues. So all these things make it a very challenging site to put the building where you want to put it. So as you know, fill in it is an undocumented material, so it poses risk to putting a structure on top of it. So we had to come up with some pretty innovative ways to maintain the control costs while still trying to get the building built. So a boilerplate recommendation would be just remove all the fill and then replace it with all brand new material in a controlled manner, build your building. Very expensive. So we explored many, many ways to amend the fill, improve the fill, and just address it in a way that would be more cost effective than just hauling it all out and bringing in new material. So we came up with that plan to do that. But that plan required us to further define the fill thickness and any other, including the stream, any other situations that we might concern us for putting the building where you want to put it. So we suggested doing more explorations after the boring program. And that's what we did at this point.
If we were going to do more exploration after the boring program, and the borings were done approximately just over a year ago, why wouldn't we have done it at the time that the boring results came back? And so this was more of a known entity. I mean, and the issue being not that we had favorable bids come in, but if we didn't, this could potentially put a project over when we thought we were under. And so, you know, I don't think that the town was notified to say, hey, there may be a potential problem here. We recommend coming out, let's do some deep tests out there. Let's do a test pit or two, or let's do some additional borings, April, May, June of last year. So I don't remember seeing any of those recommendations. Eddie? Were these recommendations ever made to the owner?
No, I don't believe they were, other than it being noted in the geotech report.
Well, I'll go back to the report, and there is language on there that and I don't recall exactly what it says, but it says something along the lines of based upon, and I know there's always, you know, caveats, but based upon the findings that it should be I'm gonna say a suitable sub base for the building, or there's some line near the end of the report that says something along those lines. I know it's not exactly that. But again, you know, us just reading that, we say, oh, we're good to go. I mean, I know we went back out and did test pits for a detention pond. If we were, you know, told for a basis of design, we're not comfortable, we need to do more, we'd be like, let's get our ducks in a row, especially knowing how much square footage we added, that cost was going to be who knows where. And to be clear about, let's make sure we've got all the T's crossed, I's dotted. Based upon that report and the conclusion of it, we thought we were good.
Well, I'm sorry, there was a misunderstanding, but the report pretty clearly says that we need to further delineate the fill.
Then why wasn't it done? That's the question I have. Don't tell me it was done during construction, because that's not an acceptable response to me. Why wasn't it done before this project went out to bid? Why wasn't it done last April or May? If knowing that we would potentially have a project that was over budget, given the amount of additional square footage, adding 10 classrooms, and that we maybe would have to go back to the voters for additional funds, Eddie, why wasn't this done last April, May, or June? That's the question I have. Because if we were over budget and we would have just gone out to the voters, come back, and then been like, oops, now we found unsuitable material. So I have a hard problem going back to the same well that is, we're hearing, for services. I don't know. The committee can do what they want with this.
Paul,
I don't know.
Paul, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So if I'm hearing what was said correctly, when the boilerplate was formed to test these holes, it sounds like it was deliberately set up to avoid the existing stream. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is completely incorrect. That is completely incorrect. The boring program was set up to accommodate the building, not to avoid anything in the ground.
Were there any holes in the stream though, on the original boilerplate?
Well, the stream was not identified when we went out to, that had to be, would have had to been located in place for us to do the borings in the stream. Also, there is a drain pipe in the stream, which we probably don't want to drill through.
Eddie, who did the survey work out there? Who did the Chopo survey?
Property. Yeah, that was at Malona McBroom, SLR, did the survey.
Okay.
Yeah, so that those, when we do the boring program, we would have to do, put some sort of indication of where those structures are underground, so we could then come in and avoid them, if that's what we wanted to do. So, but the boring program was not geared towards the stream. It was geared towards the building, accommodating the building and trying to find out what kind of soils exist under the building as an entity. We were not investigating the stream. We were investigating for the building.
The former stream.
We know that the stream,
Yeah, the former stream.
I mean, we knew that the stream essentially flowed through almost the entire length of the field. So, you know, presumably, no matter where it was located, our borings were going to intersect with it. Is that a fair statement?
No, because most of the borings, none of the borings picked up on the organic layer, because the organic layer is more of a, I would call it a seam that goes east-west across the site.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Steve Ditsko from SLR. Joe, do you have a map of the borings that you can put up? Because I think it's a little hard to grasp. I think, folks, what we're talking about is that there's a grid of borings, and this area, this seam of organics, happens to run transverse to the building, or almost perpendicular to the mainstream that runs through the property. So it was a bit of a surprise, number one. Number two, there's no guaranteeing that an additional half dozen borings would have even picked that up.
This is Laurel. I hate to interrupt. I have to go.
It's something we're going to have to address with Tecton, because you're their consultant, and I guess we'll just address it with Tecton. I know we need testing services to move forward. I don't know. Laurel, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, Laurel was just saying she had to jump off, Paul. She just
Okay.
didn't want to interrupt.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Paul, yeah, we'll have to follow up with that. You know, as far as the additional service being presented, I mean, geotechnicals, construction administration services would have been required as an additional service, regardless of whether there had
No,
been.
I understood. I'm just questioning going back to the same well. But again, that's me. I
understand.
feel slighted here. I'm just, it is what it is, whatever.
I really think a graphic would be helpful.
I've looked at the maps. I've looked at both sets of maps.
Well,
I've
but
looked at where the
maybe your
building
other
was.
your other commissioners haven't. There seems to be a sense of discontent and confusion over something that's below ground and can't be apparent above ground. It's an unforeseen site condition. It's a risk to the project. Might not have been picked up with additional borings.
Or it might have been picked up.
And it might have, and that's a great point. And if it was, you would have been paying for it anyway.
Not to this magnitude. I disagree with that statement, because when you're putting something out to bid
In a competitive bid
you're not
market.
paying that same unit cost as if you were when it comes up as a concealed or hidden condition. There's always a premium attached to that. So there is an order of magnitude on that premium as well.
As an example, for instance, there were no records of a dry well on site, no as-built drawings. That was hit today during the site prep work.
Mhm.
It's an unforeseen condition.
Yeah. And
There's a certain amount of those unforeseens. We're talking about somewhere between 8,000 and 11,000 cubic yards of unsuitable material. To me, that's not a dry well that we hit. That's a little bit larger order of an item.
I mean, it's not unusual. I mean, I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with geotechnical borings, but the boring is only 2 inches in diameter.
Mhm.
So it's quite small. a lot of the time you don't get a full recovery of material that you are sampling. So there are gaps in the data. That is pretty common. So we have to make some interpretations with that. Also, the sample, it's not a continuous sampling event. So there are gaps in the sampling, and that's all done to basically save time and money and to characterize the site. So given the very small nature of the borings, the widely spread nature of the borings, and the nature of this condition of being a narrow seam across the site, it's not unusual to have not picked it up in the 1 or 2 borings that were in the general area of the seam.
Now,
so the rest of the borings and test pits all come out exactly as planned. Everything else is spot on. It's just this particular seam that happens to run across the building.
Well, isn't there a considerable amount of unsuitables in the roadbed area too, as we're coming in?
Well, the borings,
access road.
When the boring program is done, the boring program is done for design purposes, not normally construction. So when the boring
No. I'm just asking as a practical matter. Right now, we're talking about just that seam, but it's more than just that seam, correct?
Well, I guess there's a number of issues. So that issue with the construction roadway. So we did 2 borings in that location over in that area and identified fill as we had expected. So the intent of those borings was to provide information for the final design of the roadway that would go over that area, not to support construction vehicles. If we knew we were going to support construction vehicles in that area, we would have done a deeper boring. So at the time the boring program went out, we didn't really know that was going to be a construction roadway.
We're talking to, and this is part of my part of the irking. We have the same firm who did the borings, who did the civil engineering, and who did the topo and survey.
Paul, you just went very still.
That wasn't me.
I think Paul froze up.
Well, I think to his point, it was, we had these plans in place. It was all within, one office. So we had gone through various site plans. We'd gone through relocated entryways, not relocated entryways, where we have construction entrances, where we do not have how the site logistics would work. And I believe at that point, so, I don't know if just not communication in the office, or I think that I'm guessing that was going to be his question. How did we not know some of these details when they were all done under the same roof?
I think the implication that slightly over 3 dozen borings on a multi-acre site didn't give you 100% knowledge of what transpired decades ago onto the property. It's just an inappropriate assertion, and it's just naive, and it's not within the realm of activity. That's it. It's just that, it's just not realistic.
Well, I can appreciate and understand that statement, and that, yes, of course, when you have 23 acres and, are digging 32-inch holes, there's going to be stuff out there. What I think the more the question is understanding and knowing there was an existing stream, understanding and knowing there was wetlands that were filled in to make fields, understanding and knowing other projects in town, which I know the owner has brought up, where we've had the same issues. This was all pre-designed. This was all during design. And then to find out these conditions, I'm looking at the report right now. And even under the building, it says, notes of unsuitable material and this and that. And So if we all know this before final design goes out, why wouldn't we design for it? Case in point, and I know it's not fair, but okay, if I know that I'm constructing a building and that, owner wants something that, as 24 foot clear spans, and LVL ain't gonna do that. Well, I need to design something that will work prior, not say, oh, I know you wanted that, but it's not gonna work. We need to figure out how to make it work.
This is why we wanted to do the extra explorations.
So why wasn't that done before we went out to bid? Why wasn't that during the design phase when we know it needed to be explored?
I don't know. I don't know why it was not implemented.
And that's the owner's real question.
At the point that we decided to add 10 additional classrooms, did we add any additional borings, being that we're increasing the footprint of the building? Thank you.
No, the footprint of the building was already established, more or less, when we went to do the geotechnical boring. So the plan for the additional classrooms was already, it was there. So the grid of borings was laid out with that in mind.
Okay, thank you, Eddie.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, the intent of the test pits or the additional explorations were to fill in the gaps in between the borings we had already done. Because part of the approach we used was to leave a nominal amount of fill in the building area as well. And we wanted to make sure we didn't leave too much fill that would later become a problem. So the additional explorations are actually for twofold.
So I guess the question I have is, how do we proceed forward from here? Obviously, I think Paul's comments about the exposure that could have potentially happened is certainly very valid. And, it seems like there was some miscommunication here, that either we didn't see the recommendation in the report and act strongly enough on it, meaning Tecton, that is, or that SLR didn't push for it harder to be done. And if we need to take our public beating for that, that's fine. But obviously we have an issue that needs to be dealt with. Certainly, as Paul mentioned earlier, I think there's, some further homework that needs to be done. I understand, obviously, if this had been incorporated in the bid, we might have seen some more competitive numbers, but I do think it's worth having the conversation, as has been alluded to with the site bidder, that unit price is probably not appropriate to be invoked for something like this, that's really more of a, to be used for more minor adjustments. And since this is such a large area, I think we need to have a more comprehensive pricing on that. And, we need to do our homework in terms of determining whether that the excess excavation can be used at other locations. We know that there's fields that are going to need to be created either at Wisconsin or at the town hall, or both. So to try and minimize the exposure here. But obviously we can put together, a response letter as our position of, as we said, that, we think things were in a responsible fashion. But I guess, what else is required of us at this point?
Well, I would say that we are, as owner, I would say, stuck between a rock and a hard place, but I guess it's more like an old tree stump, and I don't know what else is bad fill deteriorating. And, obviously with respect and intent to move the project forward, this needs to be dealt with. So we're pigeonholed here with this. We definitely still have questions that we would like answered, and we definitely need to explore, because look, hey, I live it, we know it, things come up. It does. But when they are pre-planned, or if they do come up, it doesn't quite necessarily mean that discussions can't be had, especially as with the extent of this, there's as Eddie just said, as Paul alluded to, there's a major difference in, you know, it's a lot easier to just keep dumping truckloads of fill rather than, you know, mix and match in little areas. So this all needs to be explored. We're gonna have to review that in much more greater detail, but we also need to keep moving. So with respect to the proposal, I guess it is, Paul lost internet, so I'm taking over.
Back.
Paul's back.
I'm back. I'm just letting him run on.
Well then, how'd you like my analogy? Rock, hard place, tree stump, you know? I thought it was pretty
I know. I like that.
I didn't even get a smirk, but I thought it was good.
I think we're playing a bad game of Battleship with the placement of these borings.
So we're stuck, and we need to investigate where this is, because look, would have there been, if we did more exploration, found it, would have there been costs? Absolutely, there would have been. We didn't do that, so we need to do that now. And so for that reason, I'm going to say I will make a motion that we approve for the, I don't even recall, 20,000 was it?
It's a purchase order.
So the purchase order, thank you, Jack.
It's a request for additional services. It's a modification to the existing purchase order that Tecton has. So it grows their contract value by the total of $22,000.
Okay, so I will make a motion to move forward with this purchase order to not to exceed an additional $22,000 for future and current testing of unsuitable materials.
For geotechnical.
CA I'm trying to read it. I just lost my spot. For geotechnical services, CA services performed by SLR.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Oh, wait a second. What about discussion?
Sorry, discussion, Rob.
Is Tecton willing to do anything with their markup for coordination?
I think that's an item contractual in nature. I think we need to kind of discuss instead of doing that, discuss the potential avenues later on after this is moved.
Okay.
I had two comments. First of all, are we certain that this additional testing is going to totally define the problem, or is it?
This is not testing. This is for the hourly services on call by the geotechnical engineer.
So basically, they're going to be digging. They hit a pocket or another seam. They come out and go, "Yep, it's unsuitable. Owner pays more." Great. So that's basically what it's for.
Okay, but the other question is, I've heard a number like $400,000. I don't know who came up with that estimate, but is there any way that we can possibly mitigate that number or reduce it by some other outside the box thinking? I don't know, finding fill somewhere else, or who knows?
We're trying, Jack, but we have a unit cost that was in the contract, right, for replacement of unsuitables.
Right.
You have a quantity that's still being defined, and you multiply A by B, and that's where that order of magnitude comes from. It could be upward of $400,000. That's the reality of it. We have had discussions earlier today, and as Eddie said, and I think I alluded to earlier, maybe using it at Wisconsin for fill, general fill, maybe other places in town, so we're not trucking it off-site and paying a disposal fee. We're trying to mitigate it, but I think we have to look at worst case and then hope for the best.
Sure.
Again, this is one of those items that kind of sticks with you.
Yeah.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? And I'm abstaining. All right, motion carries. All right, that's the end of invoices. Public comment. Public comment needs to be limited to those items that were on our agenda this evening, as it is a special meeting. Do we have any public comment there?
We should tell Laura how great of a job she did now that she can't hear us say it.
Maybe we should line up public comment for the next meeting and everybody does that.
She'll go to the recording. She won't let it go unheard. She'll go to the recording.
All right, so no public comment. Next regularly scheduled meeting, April 20th. We'll be back here in 2 weeks. Hopefully with better news, better results. So that's going to be a regular meeting that'll be open. And after that, any other items? Hearing none, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.